take book recommendations really seriously. If I'm recommending something on this channel, it's because I have read the book, I feel pretty strongly about it, and have been able to form my subjective opinions on the book itself. And maybe I think it would be a good fit for somebody that is wanting to read a similar book. So I take my recommendations very seriously, which is why today I need to warn you against some books that you should never, under any circumstances, read. These books will wreck your emotions and ruin entire genres for you. They will probably cost you money and potentially alter your life forever. So here are 10 books that I would never recommend you read. The first book is Welcome to the Hunamdong Bookshop. This book follows our main character who has recently left her very high pressure, stressful office job to open up a cozy, quiet bookshop in Seoul in the Hunamdong neighborhood. And as she is building this bookstore of her dreams, she begins to rediscover herself, rediscover her passion for life. She felt like for so long she had to do this one job that was totally soul-sucking for her, and she never thought that doing something that she was passionate about, like opening up a bookshop, would be able to sustain her and support her. There's family issues that go into it where her parents are pretty disappointed that she left this nice, well-paying job. She left a relationship behind, all because it wasn't giving her life. It wasn't serving her. And so she opens up this beautiful, cozy, quiet, quaint bookshop in this neighborhood, and she begins to meet people that come in and are experiencing the same struggles as she is, that are experiencing the same pauses in their life. They become friends with each other, and they really bond over the healing nature that literature and books can provide. And it is a beautiful story of finding community and personal growth with these specific characters. It touches on the struggles of doing something that you think you should do versus something that may be better for you, the stresses of finances and occupations and families and everything that goes into that. And the whole thing is wrapped in this quiet, cozy book that just feels like a warm hug every time you sit down to read it. It is so beautifully descriptive that there would be times that I would sit in my chair and I'd be bundled up with a blanket or a sweater or whatever, and I would really envision myself reading this book in the Hunamdong bookshop. It was so visceral and real to me, and I was able to really immerse myself in the story. I got so connected to the characters and I felt so much compassion and empathy for them, and the whole thing was really just beautifully done, beautifully written, low stakes but very deep meanings at the same time. There's nothing shallow about this book, even though it kind of feels calm. It definitely offers a quiet and reflective reading experience, and I would never recommend that you read this book because you will immediately want to quit your job and open up a bookshop or a coffee shop, which potentially is not the best idea for all of us to do, although maybe it is, and maybe that means you should read this book, but that is why I would never recommend it, because you will immediately quit your job. The next book that I would never recommend under any circumstances is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. The Hunger Games, we all know the story. It follows our main character, Katniss Everdeen, which is really one of our first main female characters in the YA category. This book really defined the genre of young adult dystopian specifically, and even kind of following the formula of a trilogy for people to go along with. It obviously takes place in a dystopian world where America has disintegrated and we are now in a new country. It's split into 12 different districts, with District 1 being the most wealthy. That's the capital. That's where all the political leaders are. It's crazy, high fashion and riches all around there. And it goes all the way down to District 12, which is the most impoverished district. And that is the district that our main character Katniss is from. And every year they hold the Hunger Games, which is kind of a celebration of the big war that destroyed the world. It's a celebration of that war finally being over, but it's really not a celebration at all. It's actually a horrific and violent game where from each district, 2 children under the age of 18 are randomly chosen in like a raffle contest, and you are supposed to go to this stadium and fight to the death. Out of the 24 people that are selected to go to the Hunger Games, there's always only one remaining, and that is the victor of that year's Hunger Games. So the reason that I would never recommend you read this is because it will truly set you on a path of reading. Specifically, if you are not a reader right now, this book has been historically the catalyst for many people becoming becoming readers. And that's a problem because most of the money that you are now saving will go to books. So if you want to save your money, I would not read this because suddenly you'll just see it disappearing. Or you'll get a library card, which is great, but you will be on hold for all of the books that you actually want to read. And it just kind of sets you in this vicious cycle of being a reader. And there are many, many downfalls to that, as we all know. The next book that I would definitely recommend you stay away from is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This book follows our two main characters, Celia and Marco, and they are young illusionists, or magicians would maybe be another word for that, and they are bound in this super secret competitive game that was put on by both of their respective mentors at the time. And the battleground for this competition in this deadly game that they are playing is the Night Circus. It is a breathtaking black and white circus that appears only at night and without any warning at all, and it'll travel around the entire globe on this magical train, and everybody knows about the Night Circus and everybody loves the Night Circus, but it is very mysterious. And so this competition that they're playing is actually more of an exhibition of power, where they create these installations or these exhibitions within the Night Circus for people to attend to, and it's kind of like who can do something better, who can create something more beautiful in the end. But not only that, it is also a beautiful and tragic love story. This is absolutely the definition of star-crossed lovers, so if you're into that genre, this is absolutely a book that does it for you. And so as they begin to fall in love, they face the complications of technically being rivals and competitors, and how does that work within this incredible backdrop of the Night Circus. This book has some of the best descriptions that I've ever read. It is fully immersive. You are able to picture everything that you are seeing and experiencing, down to the smells. This author defines smells and sounds and even some like texture on clothing and stuff. It's all so vivid and real, and that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love this book. It also has, in my opinion, the best use case of second person narrative writing that I have ever read myself. And so the whole thing is just very, very, very immersive. And the reason why I would never recommend this book is similar to the reason why I would never recommend Welcome to the Hunom Dog Bookshop. It's actually because once you leave this book, once you finish this book and you leave the Night Circus, there's really no going back. You are forever bound to this setting that this book takes place in. And again, you will quit your job and want to join the circus. You'll want to dress exclusively in black and white with maybe a little bit of pop of red in there. It just makes you look around at your current world and feel a little bit sad that you're not in this world. And that's why I would never recommend this book. Moving right along to a book that you definitely should not read, and that is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This book is wild. It explores themes of racism and cultural appropriation and the very dark side of the publishing industry. It follows our main character, June Hayward, who is a struggling author who is watching her more successful friend that they've really been peers throughout their entire college experience and professional experience. She's watching her friend become essentially an instant success. Super famous, super rich. Her debut novel does amazing, while our main character, June's debut novel, completely flops. So when June's friend, her name is Athena, she dies suddenly in the beginning of the book from like a freak accident, and June decides to impulsively steal her unpublished, in-progress manuscript and publish it as her own book. And well, wouldn't you know it, what happens? June finds instant success, literary stardom, riches, fortune, Netflix deals, everything that Athena had that June was jealous of. But not only that, June publishes it under her middle name. Her middle name is Song. So instead of publishing it under June Hayward, she publishes it under Juniper Song, and kind of lets people believe that she may be Chinese or Asian instead of the Caucasian that she actually is, because the book that she steals is about Chinese laborers in World War I. I think it's World War I. And so June publishes it under Juniper Song, this book about Chinese laborers, and everybody is like, oh, well, is this like a new Chinese author? And they're kind of less likely to jump down her throat as a white woman talking about Chinese culture. This book is darkly satirical and a bit unsettling. It's a really interesting and gripping exploration of privilege, identity, who is allowed to tell certain stories in the world. Like, are we allowed to tell stories stories that take place in a different culture than ours. It explores a lot of the dark side of social media and Twitter, and it's just a wildly written book. What's super crazy about this is it's all written from first-person perspective from our main character, June, and the whole time she knows that she has done something wrong, but she continues to try and justify herself mentally and internally, but also externally on social media and on the internet. She's basically saying that she didn't really do anything wrong because the manuscript that she took from Athena was hardly finished anyway, so June did write a bunch of it, and she did put her blood, sweat, and tears into this book that she ended up publishing, and so she's justifying it continually in her brain that this isn't actually that bad, what she ended up doing. But if you look at it on paper without the emotional backing to it, it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. But even as the reader, I was questioning things because you want to be able to connect to your main character. You want to be able to be on their side. But when they are doing something that is objectively wrong, I dislike them. I want to dislike them. But R.F. Kuang did such a good job writing this book because I didn't dislike our main character. I was ultimately rooting for her, even though I felt kind of torn and guilty about it, to the point where I was kind of questioning my own morals in the end. I was almost on her side when she was justifying herself, making excuses for what she did, and trying to downplay the severity of the situation. I would find myself on her side and be like, yeah, you know what? It's not that bad. This other author's dead anyway, and she really did put a lot of work into it, and I would kind of be justifying it to myself as well. It was such a crazy reading experience. The reason that I would never recommend this book is because you may question your own morals. You may find your foundation of beliefs being shaken because you don't know what is right and wrong, and it is such an interesting dichotomy to be in. So that is why I would not recommend this book, because it'll put you through a lot of mental stress. The next book that I would not recommend under any circumstances is The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. So this follows our main character, Cassie Andrews, as she is working in a bookshop in New York City. And one day she kind of, through a series of events, happens upon this book that she's never seen before, but it is really, really old. It is clear that this book is pretty ancient and it's not a normal book. Pretty quickly, she realizes that it's actually a magical book. And this book allows you to enter through any door anywhere. So you could look up a Google image of a door in Italy, picture that door in your brain, and use the book to travel from New York City to this door in Italy. It doesn't have to be a place that you have already previously been. Like I said, you can look it up on Google, or it can be a place that you have been, like maybe you travel from New York City to your childhood home in Indiana, or you go to your favorite restaurant, or you picture a car door that you recently saw. You can use this book to go anywhere super, super fast. Of course, the allure of this book comes with a lot of peril at the same time. Cassie, obviously, once she has figured out what the book does, gets really excited about it, and she's using the door a bunch of times, and she's going to all these different places in the world and testing things out. But the more that she uses it, the more attention she is attracting from the wrong people, the bad guys. And she kind of gets swept up into this good versus evil plot where there's a group of people over here that are kind of acting as like safeguard librarians, and they want to take the Book of Doors and other magical books. As Cassie learns, it's not just the Book of Doors that's a magical book. There's tons of books with tons of different magical properties that are really powerful. And so there's this group that are kind of the librarians that know that there's a lot of bad people that want to use these books' power for evil. And so they are trying to collect all of them and hide them away and keep them safe. So Cassie kind of gets swept up with them. And then there's the other group over here, the bad guys, the really bad guys. And they are chasing Cassie and the librarians, and they are very dangerous and very violent. Gareth Brown really has crafted a fascinating universe and a super interesting world. The world building in this book and the magic system in this book is so interesting to me, and it is entirely captivating. The whole time that you are reading this book, you are in it. You are absolutely in it. You're following along with Cassie and these other characters, and you want to protect the books. And the bad guys, he writes them so well. They are terrifying. There's this one particular antagonist. It's kind of like the main big bad, and the only thing you know about her is she's called the Woman, and she can use these books for pure evil, and she's terrifying. She's really terrifying. And so you are really on the edge of your seat the entire time you're reading this book, and I think that the world is super interesting. Even though it is kind of urban fantasy, it takes place mostly in New York City. The magic system that is laid out with these books is so cool. And the reason that I would never recommend you read this book is because honestly, honestly, it ruins other books for you. You want books to be magical because as a reader, books feel magical. They can transport you to any time, anywhere with all these different characters, and so it kind of feels magical. And then this book comes out that tells you books are magical, and it sort of laughs in your face a little bit because here we are in the real world and I can't get the actual Book of Doors to open a pathway to Italy for me, which is really all I want it to do, unfortunately. So that's why I wouldn't read this book, because it just kind of makes you sad that it doesn't actually operate as the Book of Doors. I'm really just making stuff up at this point, but we're gonna keep going. The next book that I would definitely never recommend you read is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This is part of a duology. The second book is Crooked Kingdom, and it takes place in the world of Ketterdam. And the story follows our main character, Kaz Brecker. Kaz is a cunning and ruthless thief that is kind of known for always getting the job done. And in this book, him and his group of thieves are offered the chance at this insane heist. They are supposed to break into this impenetrable prison to release or kidnap or free this super powerful person who is being held prisoner there. So Kaz and his group, which is kind of this like fun little gang of misfits, there's like a sharpshooter who's got a gambling problem. There's a really cool spy who's known as the Wraith. There's a Grisha who has healing powers, and if you don't know anything about Six of Crows, it actually takes place in the Shadow and Bone universe, which is called the Grisha universe, the Grishaverse. So there's a Grisha with healing powers, a convict who is hell-bent on revenge, and a runaway with a mysterious past. And that is the makings for a perfect ensemble. So they embark on this perilous mission, and tensions are rising, and loyalty is tested, and betrayals lurk around every corner. Success, if they pull this mission off, it means unimaginable wealth. But if they don't, this is super fast-paced, it's super action-packed, it's a young adult book, so it's very easy to read and get through, and I would say the same about Crooked Kingdom. The reason this book is so good is because of the cast of characters. Kaz and his entire group, you are immediately attached to a found family trope, one of the best examples of a found family trope in my opinion. I love them all so much. And the reason that I will never recommend this book is because it will make every other heist story seem incredibly mediocre. The characters are too good, the banter is too strong, and the found family dynamics will ruin you emotionally. Plus, once you finish it, you are morally obligated to read Crooked Kingdom next. So honestly, those are enough reasons. You definitely should not read this book. Leigh Bardugo does not believe in emotional safety nets. The next book that I would never recommend anybody read ever is First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. This is a pretty new book that recently came out, and it was perfect to read around Valentine's Day. That's when I read it. So this follows our main characters, Lucy and Aiden, in the city of Boston. Aiden hosts a radio show, a nighttime radio show that is basically a love podcast or a love radio show where people will call in and ask Aiden for romantic dating advice. But the thing is that Aiden has completely become a cynic after all of the years of hearing people call into his show, complaining about their partners, complaining about love in general. It has slowly chipped away at his romantic heart and has made him completely stop believing in love itself. So Aiden is the cynic. Lucy is this cool single mom who works as a mechanic, and one day her daughter calls into Aiden's radio show and talks about her mom and talks about how she really wants her mom to start dating again because she thinks she's sad and lonely. It is very Sleepless in Seattle, but purposefully so, which is why I think it's kind of cool. I think if the author had really said that that was a unique idea, I would have had an issue with it, but she very explicitly says in the end of the book that it is totally inspired by Sleepless in Seattle. It's almost like a love letter to the movie Sleepless in Seattle, and I love that. It's amazing. So Lucy's daughter calls into the radio show, and then Lucy starts talking to Aiden, and suddenly this radio show goes totally viral. They were initially kind of struggling with ratings and listeners, but because of Lucy and everything that she says on the show, it goes really, really mega viral. And basically they hatch this plan where Lucy is going to go on the show with Aiden and take callers and offer advice, but also kind of look for love and potential dates in real time. And as that is all happening, as Lucy is supposed to be looking for love, she actually kind of finds love with Aiden, and they start flirting, and they got a little bit of a situationship going on, and they have to really deny their attraction because they can't be together for the sake of the show, but that's all they want to do. And honestly, this may be my new favorite confession of love I have ever read. I love it so much. It was so well done. The characters of Aiden and Lucy are perfect together. They are basically written as polar opposites, but ones that completely mesh in such a great way. They have incredible chemistry, incredible banter. All of the dialogue felt really real. The tone felt real. It didn't feel hyperbolic. It didn't feel exaggerated at any time. And a lot of times romance novels can feel like that, which I'm not saying is necessarily a bad thing, but there was something really refreshing about reading this where it felt like you were watching a movie almost. You were watching actors portray a script that is really close to how somebody would react in real life. And that was what was so great about it. But then you have the twist of romance, the twist of whimsy, and the twist of a happy ending. It was so good. Again, the confession of love is everything. So the reason that I would recommend you never read this book is because, particularly if you are a romance book reader, this will ruin every other romance book for you. Everything else will fall short. That's just the truth. And if you are not a romance reader, but you like maybe rom-com movies, you will just want to see this made into a movie, and then you don't have it, and then you're disappointed. So either way, you're disappointed if you read this book, so don't read this book. You should actually definitely read that book for sure. Please go read it. The next book that I would never recommend you read is obviously A Court of Thorns and Roses. I think it's safe to say that this is the book that made romantasy popular. I'm sure that there were other romantasy books that existed, but this one skyrocketed on the TikTok charts and the Bookstagram and booktok communities, and I really think that this made romantasy an actual genre. Before, it was just like fantasy with romance, but this kind of solidified the genre. And I say that because there's like actual romantasy sections at Barnes & Noble now, and I think I would attribute that to this book. Everybody knows what this book is. It is a very, very loose retelling of Beauty and the Beast. We follow our main character, Feyre, who is a human. Because of a series of circumstances, she has to go into the Fey realms and live with this Fey, this fairy creature. He's kind of like the beast to humans. Fey are all very beastly to humans. And slowly she starts to fall in love, and it seems like a very simple and lighthearted book. This particular story is part of a, depending on how you look at it, 3-book series with a couple of spin-off books in the series as well. So if you read this book, you will be reading book 2 and book 3, then follows a novella after that, and then there's a spin-off book with a different character after that. So that's 5 books in this series, but not only will you read those 5 books, you will then move on to Throne of Glass by the same author, which is an 8-book series. And since you're already 13 books in at that point, you might as well read the Crescent City series, which has 3 finished books in it right now. And so at that point, if you read this book, you are 16 books deep at least. And that's a lot of time. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort. It is probably over 10,000 pages of words that you will then need to read. And so that is the reason why I would never recommend that anybody read this book. You will get sucked into the Mossverse, the multiverse of countless characters and countless stories, lots of romance, lots of action, so much fantasy, and some people just aren't cut out for that. So don't read that book. The next book that I would definitely never recommend you read is The Light Between Oceans by M.L. Stedman. So this book is a historical fiction novel. It's a very emotional book about love and grief and moral dilemmas that kind of shape our lives. So this is set a couple years after World War I, and it follows our main character, Tom. Tom is a veteran that comes back from the war and takes a job on this little itty-bitty island called Janus Rock where the lighthouse is. In the beginning of the book, he has a little bit of a love story with this woman named Isabel, and him and Isabel get married and they move to the lighthouse. And in their marriage, they have always longed for a child. It is all Isabel in particular has really wanted. She just wants to be a mom. And unfortunately, it's just not happening for them, and they suffer a couple of losses with their babies, and they just aren't able to grow their family the way that they want to. But one day, a very small boat washes on the shore of their lighthouse. And in this boat is a body of a man who is not living anymore and a living baby. Isabel, out of this longing to have a child, she's like, this is a gift from God. This is God giving us a child because we have lost so many of our own. So she convinces Tom that they should keep the baby and raise it as their own, because you could put together that its only living relative is now not living anymore. But as the years pass and as they're raising this baby, Tom in particular is feeling extremely guilty about their choice to keep the baby, especially when they learn that there is somebody out there that's looking for this child. This book is beautifully written. It is extremely emotional. It explores a lot of themes on love and sacrifice and the consequences of our choices. The reason that I would never recommend this is because it is absolutely heart-wrenching. You will cry so hard reading this book. I remember reading it for the very first time. I was on a train going to Switzerland and I had all this beautiful scenery around me and I couldn't even look at the Swiss Alps and enjoy the breathtaking view because I had just finished this book and my eyes were so blurry that I couldn't see through the tears. And I was with a couple of friends who were just sleeping the whole ride. And I was here just like reading this book, just crying on the train, just absolutely crying. But then I would look up and be like, oh, that's so beautiful, but I'm crying and it's sad. Oh, that's so beautiful. Oh, this book is so sad. Don't put yourself through that. That's crazy. Why would you put yourself through that? That's insane. Don't read this book. Now we've made it to the end. The last book that I would never, ever, ever, under no circumstances, ever recommend you read is The Will of the Many by James Islington. This book follows our main character, Viz, who is an orphan that is really struggling to survive in this powerful civilization that enforces this very strict and hierarchy-like system through something called will. Will is sort of like the Force for any Star Wars fans out there. It's kind of just like magic in general, something that is always around you. Maybe not everybody can use it to the same extent that other people can, but it's just kind of this existing thing in the universe, in this world. So this hierarchy system allows the ruling class to draw strength from every other person underneath them, strength or will, which essentially makes the elite, this ruling class, completely unstoppable. And it goes down and down and down and down to the lowest class system possible, that basically their only lot in life is to cede their own will to the people above them. So Viz, through a wild set of circumstances, is suddenly taken to this elite academy that is kind of the place where all of the ruling class of this world send their children to be indoctrinated within this system and this hierarchy protocol. And they churn out the military leaders and the political leaders and the religious leaders. Everybody comes from this academy. But Viz is actually going in there kind of undercover to take this academy down because there is some sketchy stuff that is happening there and he is trying to figure out what it is. And he's also hiding this massive secret that he has never ceded will and will never cede will because he's kind of like a rebel in this world. The first like 100 or 50 pages or so may seem a little bit slow to those that read it just because it is a lot of world building. It's a lot of foundation building because the magic system is kind of complex, so it takes a lot to really unpack it. But once you get past that foundation building, this book is so fast paced. It is so gripping. It's a big boy too. You know, he's like 600 pages or so, but I was reading this so fast near the end. It's super thrilling. It really focuses on strategies and political maneuverings and rebellions and again, just kind of like a commentary on this type of class system that's taking place. It's really, really interesting. And you may be wondering why I would never recommend this book because I have actually talked about it many times on this channel and I have really pleaded with everybody here to read this book because it was my favorite read of 2024. I've completely changed my mind though. You shouldn't read this book because we are still waiting for book 2 and it is agonizing to not have a continuation to this story. This book ends on such a crazy cliffhanger and there's just really no information about when book 2 or geez, book 3 potentially is gonna come out. And so we're just left waiting for more. And that is a really horrible place to be in. And so honestly, you should just save yourself and not read this amazing, incredible book. So there you go. These are 10 books that it would probably be a really bad idea for you to read because you'll just like them way too much for all of the reasons that I have laid out. Don't read these books. And if you have read these books, I would love to know why you think other people shouldn't read them as well. As always, thank you so much for joining and watching and hanging out with me on this corner of the internet and having a little bit of fun today. And we will see you next time.